Hello, everybody, and welcome to this educational series in the Chart School series on chart lists. That's a tongue breaker. My name is Julius de Kempenaer. I'm going to take you through my use of chart lists on the StockCharts website. I'm going to explain to you how I use them, why I use them, how I fill them, and how I organize them. And let's dive straight into the nitty-gritty of my chart lists. Now, when I was preparing for this video, I had to actually, it's a good thing that we do these videos every now and then, because it forces me to actually get my thoughts in order, get all my ducks in a row, because what are you actually doing with these chart lists, and how many do you have, and how are they organized? And at some stage, the thought that popped up in my mind was my chart lists, and that actually happened when I opened up my chart list. And I thought, you know what? My chart lists actually look like my shed. And so I went out and I took a picture of my shed, or the interior of my shed. And as you can see, it's a mess. And this is how a shed looks in real life. I mean, go look in the mirror and tell me that your shed doesn't look like that. And the good thing is that I can find everything I need in that shed. Although it looks like a mess, I can still find what I'm looking for. Maybe not as fast as I wanted to, but usually I can still pretty good find what I'm looking for. Now, that's real life. And then I thought about, yeah, but if I'm going to tell these people how they organize their chart lists, etc., then you get to the how you want it to look. That's like the demo version of whatever you're looking at. And I think that the story with my shed is the same. You have the real life stuff, and then at some stage you think, this is crazy, I need to fix that. And you spend the whole weekend fixing up your shed, getting everything in order, organizing it, and it all looks really great, and you have this. And then when you come back 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later, you're back to your old shed because you worked and you put this there and your tools there and your stuff there, etc., etc. And I think that's what's also happening with chart lists, at least with my chart lists. Now, my use of chart lists is actually, I think, is twofold. The first way I use chart lists is basically to save charts, because that's what they're for. And primarily my chart list with annotations. And you can have them as a watch list, like stocks or charts that are on your shopping list and you want to keep an eye on them. Or you have added the symbols that you have in your portfolio to a list, and you use that list to basically track your portfolio, keep the finger on the pulse of what's happening in your portfolio. Or you can use it for market monitoring. You just create a chart list of a number of interesting, indexes, ETFs, stocks, etc., whatever you're looking at, just to keep an eye on what's going on. And maybe you can come up with a few more use cases for chart lists. And then the second use case, at least for me, for chart lists, is the ability to break down large universes and use them as input in RRG. This video being made by me, it's not a surprise that I'm going to talk about RRG as well and show you how I use these chart lists in combination with RRG, because I think that that's where a really powerful combination is made. And just like my shed, the chart lists, I think, are a living ecosystem. So they evolve over time because your shopping list changes, your portfolio obviously changes. For some people, it changes very rapidly. For other people, it changes not so rapidly. But over time, the holdings in a portfolio change. And maybe you get interested in different markets, in different universes, so you need to adapt your chart list to that. And also when you break down universes for input in RRG, those universes change. Sectors change, index members change. So there's a lot of change going on. So that makes chart lists something that needs to be maintained. And not sure if you're like me, but for me, that means that I'm always too late to maintain these things. So having to do this video actually pushed me and forced me to clean up a little bit, which is a good thing. Now, let's move to my chart list that I use to monitor, to watch, and to save annotations. And I want to go to the system, to the website. Let's bring that right here. And I'm just going to show you my chart lists, how they are, what they have, and how they're organized. Now, one little thing that I wanted to show you is, because when you're on the homepage of StockCharts, you have this button, which is chart lists, and it takes you to your chart list. It's on the homepage, but you always need to click that button. And I often find myself, somewhere else on the site looking, and maybe I'm in my blog and I'm working there, and I've got a page open, and then I want to go to my chart lists. And instead of having to click to StockCharts, go to the dashboard and click the button, I've created a bookmark, which is ChartLists, which brings me immediately to ChartLists. And the little trick here, which you may or may not know, is that because the page here is actually servlet favorites, see servlet without anything, and that's the home page. If you go to chart lists, you see that the URL has not changed. Now you can save this, and if you save this chart list, it will always bring you to the top of the page. Now, what you want to do is in chart list, add hashtag chart lists to that URL. And then wherever you are, if you have that in your bookmarks, it will always pop up. It will bring up the chart list full screen, just like you see it with me right now. Now, my chart lists are organized. This is an RRG chart list. That is a chart list that is dedicated for commentators, so you won't see that. And for me, my chart lists are primarily used for writing my blogs and doing my videos. So that's where the meat and the stuff is. You see this one here, it's got 451 charts. And if we look into that chart list, then you see these are all charts that are linked somewhere in a blog article. And so I save my charts into that list, and then I link them in an article. And when you click on that link, you will get this chart out of my chart list. So that's one use. And you can see that I have actually the names of the charts I have learned myself to actually put the date of the chart on it. So here you see this chart was made in 2019, May 8. And there was a chart of the wedge hourly or executing a wedge, and you see all that kind of stuff. So that is my most important list. The second most important list is my Sector Spotlight chart list. You know that I've got the show Sector Spotlight every Tuesday here on StockCharts Television. And this chart list holds all the charts that I, on a regular basis, use in Sector Spotlight. And I can just bring them up. This is my preferred view. I like the summary because then I can click on the link, brings up the chart, and I can then from here, I can move to all my charts that I'm looking at on a regular basis in Sector Spotlight. And they have all the annotations that I use, and I update them when I think they're out of order. I update my annotations, save them again, and then they're always available. So I also know when I am presenting Sector Spotlight, what I've been talking about. I've been talking about this trend channel, I'm talking about this divergence, and so with the annotations there, that all remains visible for me, which helps me to keep on track basically with the storyline and the narrative. Now, for monitoring, I also have a few special groups. Now, one is, for example, here is asset classes, and that's a very simple chart list. It has a number of ETFs that represent a number of asset classes. And the reason these are just plain vanilla charts. just for the last six months daily. But that's not the reason for having this chart list. The reason is because I can get a report sent to me. So I have ticked the boxes, send daily report and send weekly report. And what happens is after the close in the US, I will get a report from StockCharts in my mailbox, which gives me the performance for these asset classes for the day or for the week. So I don't have to go anywhere. I look at it on my phone and I can immediately see, hey, the market did this and the market did that. And I'm good to go and up to date immediately. So that's another reason why I use chart lists, to have a report mailed to myself after the close of the day or the close of the week. And here you will see, if you watch Sector Spotlight, you will see a few chart lists which you may recognize. So here are my monthly charts, and they are kind of special because these are ending at the end of the month. So in a few days' time, when I'm starting to record the Sector Spotlight show with the monthly charts on the first Tuesday of the month, I will change all these end dates to October 31st to keep it clean, because you shouldn't look at a monthly chart halfway through the month. Well, you can do it, but you shouldn't actually draw conclusions out of that. So that's a special chart list for me as well. And then another special chart list, and that's actually a public chart list. I made that public. That's my chart list that I maintain for the sector rotation model. That's the macro view on sector rotation. If you go to the perf chart, and you scroll lower, you will find the sector rotation model. And the four elements that are super important, aside from the sectors themselves, are these four macro tickers, macro symbols. And I stuck them in a chart list, and I've made it public. So it's a public chart list. You can actually find it in the public chart list. And on the chart, I have made annotations on how to interpret that, because this sector rotation model helps you to identify whether you're in a full recession, early recovery, full recovery, or early recession. And these four macro indicators need to behave in a certain way. Now, here is the consumer sentiment index. And as you can see, the last time I updated it, it was reviving because that dip wasn't there yet, rising or a hiccup and a decline. And you can see what type of behavior of the chart corresponds with the phase in the sector rotation model and the economic cycle. So right now, I think this is actually interesting because it looks like as if it's regaining its downtrend. So declining this chart, and declining means that the market is in a full recovery. You can do that. I've got that for all indicators. So here is the industrial production index. You got the four phases and what the chart should do. And here you see it was steeply rising, and now it seems to slow down. So that's flattening out. Again, corresponds with a full recovery. And then you got the interest rates bottoming out or rising rapidly. And it looks as if we're, instead of bottoming out, which was the early recovery, we're now in full recovery going into rising rapid. And then just to wrap it up here with the yield curve, this is also a chart that I use a lot in Sector Spotlight. You can see those phases and look at how that works with this yield curve chart. So these are a number of chart lists that I maintain, annotate, and keep alive, and use them in my blogs and in Sector Spotlight. You may notice that I've used a coding system to rank them, because otherwise the chart list would look like my shed. And I actually did a lot of work on this morning while I was preparing for it. And I think if you scroll to the bottom, then you will see that there is less coding, and you got like this: computer services. What's that? I mean, computer services, but from XLK or whatever. And here are CV, XLF groups. I don't even know what that is. Right here. Why is that called CV? I have no idea anymore. I did that sometime, but no clue why and how. So that's not very useful. Compare a little bit with if you have ever coded a computer program, I hope you've learned and taught yourself to actually put in very good comments on what the program is actually doing. And I should have done that with these groups, and I have done it for these groups. And I've actually put in those numerical values, which allows me to group them together. So the 00s are my most, because they list on top of the, they come floating on top of the list when you bring up the chart list in this fashion. So the 00s are the most important one, and they go lower. So they go asset classes monthly, asset classes, sector ETFs, sector indexes monthly, sector indexes. These are equal weight sectors. These are small cap sectors. This is the chart of the sector rotation model. That's the 0050. And then I moved to the individual sectors, because we can do a lot with that. And that actually brings me to my second use. And I'm going to go back to my sheet, because this is the second way I use chart lists. And basically to slice and dice large universes. Because you can get chart lists like that go on forever. But do they make sense? And can you find what you're looking for? If you're in the shed, can you find what you're looking for? That's what it's all about. And if I think in terms of universes and slicing and dicing, this is how my mind works. And I've limited to the S&P 500, but you can actually bring up any universe if you like. So the S&P is broken down, as we all know, in 11 sectors. And for a long time, I actually went from sectors right to stocks. And if you ever use RRG on the website, you will know that in the drop-down box, the members of all sectors are listed as a predefined group, and you can just call them up in one go and plot an RRG. Not too long ago, I started doing some more granular work and started working with groups, because as you know, these sectors are also broken down into groups and then into stocks. So actually add an extra layer of granularity in this, well, call it a pyramid, call it a breakdown, call it an organizational scheme, whatever you like, but I guess you get the gist of it. So I want a chart list that shows me all my sectors. Then I want chart lists that show me all the stocks in the sectors. But I also want chart lists that show me all the groups that make up a sector. And then I want chart lists that show me all the stocks inside a group. Now, how do you organize that? And I've actually made a previous video for the Chart School series on scans. And we'll put the link in the description of this video. And in that video, explain how you can actually fill those chart lists with the names that you're looking for, or the indexes that you're looking for. Filling a chart list, creating that chart list is one thing, but then organizing it is a second thing. Now, what I've done here is I've created, so here is a group with the sector index, and in sector spotlight, I have the charts for all sectors. XLB. I'm referring to the ETFs, and I use them, the indexes and the ETFs, more or less throughout each other because they're very much alike. So for the chart list names, I'm using the acronyms of the ETFs because I think everybody, that's probably the most well known to a lot of people. Now, 010000 is the XLB holding. So this are all the individual stocks that make up the materials sector, XLB. If you go back and you see that 0110 is a chart list that holds the groups that make up the materials index. So instead of the individual stocks, we now have the group indexes that make up the materials sector. And then underneath the groups, I've got the names of all the stocks in those sectors. So the group aluminium, commodity chemicals. So if you go to commodity chemicals, here is the group, and you can see that the sector is materials and the industry group are commodity chemicals. Now, one word of caution, because I work with RRG a lot, and RRG has a limitation of 50 tickers on one RRG. And if you go to my chart list and look at some of these materials groups, you can see here specialty chemicals, it's got 88 names. The cool thing of ChartList and view as is that I can actually view them as an RRG. If I do this, it will load up an RRG, but it is limited to 50 names. So I'm missing 33 names from this list. So the way I do it for most now is to limit the members on my group lists to stocks that are only in the S&P 500. What you will end up with is a bit of a balancing act, because sometimes, and so for materials, as an example for this show, I've added all the stocks in the database that are specialty chemicals in the materials sector. So that's 88, and mining is 75, and non-ferrous metals is 70, is 83 gold miners. If you add the requirement that the stock must also be the S&P 500, it narrows down the list dramatically, and you get much smaller and easier to handle list. However, you will find lists like Axel C Publishing with only one name in it. So the question that you got to ask yourself then, how useful is that list? I'm just going to give it to you as an example and explain to you how you can actually do your own slicing and dicing and make sure that you've got your lists the way you want them. If you're interested in small caps, you could, for example, limit your list to only small cap stocks. The scanner, the scan engine, as explained in the video that we have the link for, will allow you to create those lists. So now I've got everything organized, my sectors, my groups in the sectors, my stocks in the sectors, and my stocks in the various groups. And then I have another few lists, which is foreign stuff, world country indexes, regional, European country, India, Canada, the UK, some commodity. And here are the two lists that I maintain for the RRG baskets that I blog about every now and then. And it shows me the ones that I've mentioned in my blog articles. And if I want to see an RRG of that list, I just click on that list and see an RRG. And then I can the only thing I need to do is say how it's doing. They're all in my long basket. Hey, they're all outperforming the S&P 500. They're all on the right-hand side. So they still look good. I don't have to do a lot with that list and just carry on and go to my next list and my next basket. 90s for me is crypto, everything that's related to crypto. 95 is currencies. And then the 99 series I've got reserved for all sorts of universes that from time to time I'd like to take a look at, or I've created for some reason, and I didn't want to throw it away. So here, for example, is the list of Fidelity sector ETFs. They are a lot like the State Street Spider ETF family. This is just another family of sector ETFs that you may use if you have an account with Fidelity and you trade Fidelity ETFs. Then this is what you may want to look at. You will notice that the chart looks very much alike the Spider series, not surprisingly, because they're predominantly based on the same underlying data series. Now, the last thing I want to share with you is how I use them side by side, because now I've got all these lists, I've got the whole breakdown, I've got all my things, so my shed is neatly organized. How am I using it together with an RRG? And I make one on the right, one on the left, bring my chart list to the front. And you may have seen me doing this in Sector Spotlight. Here's my chart list, and then I bring up, here's the one, bring that to the other side. And now I can work through my chart list. I bring up my chart list on the left-hand side, and I can have my charts, my actual charts on the right-hand side. And if I want to switch to an RRG, basically the one for sectors, if I'm working with sectors, I want to see the RRG for sectors. And now I can actually go through my various charts. So here, this was the dollar index, that's an asset class. If I go to my sectors, I can see XLB, that's the materials sector. And I can work side by side here with the RRG on the left-hand side and the corresponding chart on the right-hand side, and just build my view, build my puzzle, build my thoughts on how the world is evolving right now, in this case, sectors. And if I switch to asset allocation, this list also has asset allocation charts in it. I may want to go to GOVT, for example, and look at the rotation of government bonds on the RRG, and look at the chart of GOVT on a price chart, and bring those back together. So chart lists for me are a very good and cool thing to get and remain organized. And once I'm organized, I can use these lists as input in RRGs and for my charts. And I think that's the most important message that I wanted to give you in this video. Organize yourself. For me, that's slicing and dicing all these breakdowns in sectors and groups and indexes, and then use them on an RRG, and use the RRG with the same chart list side by side with the price charts on that same chart list. And that wraps it up. That was my view on how I use chart lists on StockCharts website. I love the interaction with the viewers. So if you've got any remarks, questions, or feedback, please drop me an email. And otherwise, I hope to see you in another video here on StockCharts Television.